Right friends, welcome back to News Analysis and Features. This is the 42nd week from 12th to 18th October, and we are going to discuss one important issue in view of the judgment of the Constitution Bench of the Supreme Court, which is stated that the National Judicial Appointments Commission Act as well as the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act both were constitutionally invalid and void. Supreme Court stated that these two are unconstitutional and void. In view of this, we are going to look at the issue National Judicial Appointments Commission, does it violate the basic structure of the Constitution or not? This is the main topic for discussion this week, and let us go back to 1949. Our Constitution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on 26th November 1949. In commemoration of this, the Prime Minister recently stated that 26th November will be celebrated as Constitution Day, and subsequently India became sovereign democratic republic as the Constitution came into force on 26th January 1950. And all of us celebrate Republic Day on 26th January, and as per the Constitution, there are three wings, and the three wings are Judiciary. The highest organ of Judiciary is the Supreme Court. The other one is Executive. Executive is basically responsible for implementation of the laws made by legislature. Executive is the day-to-day governance and implementation of the laws made by the legislature, and executive is headed by the Prime Minister. And legislative or otherwise legislature is basically the parliament of the country, parliament which includes lower house, upper house and the president of the country. So as per the Constitution, the governance of the country, or you can say the basic structure of the Constitution, is devised into three organs. Judiciary headed by the Supreme Court, or the topmost organ is Supreme Court. Executive is headed by the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers, and the legislature basically the parliament of the country, right? So this is a brief about our Constitution, and if the need arises for amendment of the Constitution, what the rule says. Because any constitution, or as a matter of fact, constitution of any country should be dynamic, it cannot be static. Depending on the requirement, constitution needs to be amended. And what are the provisions in our constitution if the need arises for amending the constitution? There is article 368, which says the procedure to be followed when constitution is required to be amended. And article 368 has not imposed many strict regulations, and as per article 368, you can alter any part of the constitution, but the procedures are slightly different, right? And look at the judgment given by the Supreme Court, the famous judgment which is known as Keshavananda Bharati versus the state of Kerala, which was delivered in 1973. In that judgment, the Supreme Court Constitution Bench, headed by 13 judges, including the Chief Justice of the country, and in 7-6 judgment, 7 are for and 6 are against. In 7-6 judgment, in Keshavananda Bharati and state of Kerala case in the year 1973, the Supreme Court felt that Parliament can amend any part of the Constitution as long as it did not alter the basic structure or essential features of the Constitution. The Supreme Court stated Parliament has got powers to amend any part of the Constitution, but the amendments should not alter the basic features or basic structure of the Constitution. You may ask, what is basic structure of the Constitution? Initially we discussed partly about it. That means in broader terms, the basic structure is the judiciary, executive, legislature, and Supreme Court defined the features of basic structure of the Constitution. And the basic structure, it is, please look into this, supremacy of the Constitution. That means Constitution will be the supreme guiding force for governance of this country. Second is a republican and a democratic form of government, democracy and republican, that means sovereignty of the country should be ensured. There should not be any compromise with regard to sovereignty as well as the democratic features of the country. And third point is secular character of the Constitution. That means state should not interfere into the religions and religion should not become part of the governance of the country. That is the meaning of secular. So, the secular character of the Constitution is to be maintained. The fourth one is, as we have already discussed, separation of powers between legislative, executive and judiciary wings. Fifth one is the federal character of the Constitution. That means division of powers between center and states. We have 29 states. There is a division of powers between center and states. So, the Supreme Court in Keshavananda Bharati case felt that this is the basic structure of the Constitution and Parliament has got power to amend any part of the Constitution, but it should not alter the basic structure of the Constitution. But Article 368 has not imposed any conditions, and this Keshavananda Bharati case imposed, or you can say defined, the basic character of the Constitution, right? So, as per the basic structure, I once again remind you, judiciary, executive and legislative should be independent. These three entities are independent, right? And let us come back to the issue. This is with regard to the issue of appointments and transfer of judges to Supreme Court as well as High Courts, right? What the Constitution says? Constitution is vague about the appointment of judges to Supreme Court as well as appointment of judges to High Court. The relevant provisions are Article 124(2) and 2171. Article 124(2) says about the procedure for appointment of judges to Supreme Court. The article says every judge of the Supreme Court shall be appointed by the President after consultation with such of the judges of the Supreme Court as the President may deem necessary, but the Chief Justice must always be consulted. This much is written in the Constitution with regard to the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court. That means it is not clear about the procedure. That means Constitution of India has not laid out a clear procedure for appointment of judges. Similarly, for High Courts, every judge of a High Court shall be appointed by the President after consultation with Chief Justice of India, the Governor of a state, the Chief Justice of the High Court. Like that, it defined the vague procedure, and Constitution is clearly silent about the detailed procedure for appointment of judges, right? So, under these circumstances, the Supreme Court evolved its own system for appointment of judges to Supreme Court as well as High Courts. As per the Collegium System in vogue at present, the panel of the Chief Justice of the country as well as 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court will recommend appointments and transfers of judges to the President. That means it is totally the prerogative of the Supreme Court, that means Chief Justice and 4 senior most judges, to look into the appointments to High Courts and Supreme Court. This system, popularly known as Collegium System, came into force in the year 1993 and devised by the Supreme Court itself, right? So, Constitution is vague about the provisions. Supreme Court devised its own system for appointment of judges. Under these circumstances, the Government of India, or you can say the legislature, or you can say the Parliament of the country, brought 2 legislations. One is NJAC Act. This is dated 31 December 2014, National Judicial Appointments Commission Act. This laid down detailed procedure for appointments and transfers of judges. For appointment of judges to Supreme Court, appointments as well as transfers for judges to high courts. This laid down detailed procedure and it was passed by Parliament of the country. That means NJAC became an act on 31 December 2014 which indicated detailed procedure, because in the constitution detailed procedure was not given. And similarly, 99th Constitution Amendment Act was also passed. 99th Constitution Amendment Act was also passed. You may ask a question, why there is a need for Constitution Amendment Act? There is a need for Constitution Amendment Act because of the reason there are provisions, though they may be vague. The provisions of 124 and 217 articles in the Constitution require to be modified to implement the procedure for NJAC. Accordingly, Constitution Amendment Act was brought, which incorporated certain clauses in articles 124 as well as 217 and other articles wherever required, and for that purpose this Constitution Amendment Act was brought, that is 99th Constitution Amendment Act, as per the laid down procedure that was passed and became an act. Right. So this NJAC Act as well as 99th Constitution Amendment Act were passed on 31st December 2014 and government stated that its implementation from 13th April 2015 also. And as per the 99th Constitution Amendment Act, which modifies certain articles of the Constitution, clearly specifies how the judges are to be appointed, how the judges are to be transferred. And as per the Constitution Amendment Act, it indicates 6 members will decide the appointment and transfer of judges. 6 members, 3 will be from judiciary, 3 will be from political and civil society. Right? The judiciary consists of the Chief Justice of the country, who will be the chairperson ex officio. Ex officio means he will hold that position because of his position. Whoever the Chief Justice, he will be chairperson, and 2 other senior Supreme Court judges, they will be members. These 3 will be from judiciary and another 3 will be from political class as well as civil society. Union Minister in charge of law and justice will be 1 member, and 2 eminent persons will be appointed by the Chief Justice of India, Prime Minister of India and leader of the opposition. And 2 eminent persons, 1 will be from either scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, OBC, women or minorities, and the tenure is 3 years for these eminent persons. Other important feature is any 2 members can veto the proposal. If 2 members says it is not acceptable, then that proposal cannot go ahead. So this is the composition of the National Judicial Appointments Commission for appointments and transfers. And now the Supreme Court Constitution Bench, consisting of these 5 judges, headed by Justice J.S. Kehar. Please don't forget, Supreme Court Constitutional Bench means minimum 5 judges. Justice J.S. Kehar headed this Constitution Bench, and in 4-1 judgment, only J. Chalameshwar gave the dissent, or he has given his own opinion, and in 4-1 judgment, the Constitution Bench says that this is against the basic structure of the Constitution. That's why NJAC Act as well as 99th Constitution Amendment Act, both are unconstitutional and void, because it violates the basic principle of the basic structure of the Constitution, which devises specific powers and which devises independent judiciary, and the 3 organs should work independently. That means judiciary should be independent. Nobody, either the executive or the legislature, should involve in the functions of the judiciary. That's why it stated that as it violates the basic structure of the Constitution, it is null and void. It is unconstitutional. The judiciary says Union Minister for Law and Justice cannot become member to appoint judges, because it tantamounts to interference of executive in judiciary. Similarly, the Parliament cannot alter the basic structure of the constitution. Basic structure of the constitution says independent judiciary. When independent judiciary is a must, how an executive can involve in the appointment of judges for the judiciary? So like this, the viewpoint of the constitution bench is these two acts are constitutionally void, and there are views and counter views to this, and the arguments in favor of the Supreme Court judgment are independence of the judiciary is a must. National Judicial Appointments Commission is against this principle because Union Minister for Law and Justice will become part of that commission. That's why the independence of the judiciary will be lost. The second viewpoint is executive cannot interfere in the affairs of judiciary. Executive means Union Minister for Law and Justice. He will be one of the member, and in selecting two eminent members, Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition will be there along with Chief Justice of India. That's why it tantamounts to executive interfering in the affairs of judiciary. Third important point is you cannot tamper with the basic structure of the constitution which says independent judiciary. And fourth one is veto power of any two members is against the independence of judiciary. Fifth one is it may lead to give and take attitude between judiciary and the political class. And the last one is without independent judiciary, country will undermine its democratic principles. These are the arguments in favor of Supreme Court judgment. And if you look at against the judgment, Parliament represents the ultimate will of the people, and Parliament's decision should be supreme. These laws were passed by the legislature, that is Parliament of the country, which represents the will of the people. Parliament members are elected by the people. So when the Parliament is supreme, how the Supreme Court says that the laws passed by the Parliament are unconstitutional and void. The second important point is how the unelected will rule over the elected. In the words of the Arun Jaitley, the Union Finance Minister, the tyranny of the unelected over the elected. Elected members are representing in the Parliament, so Parliament should be supreme. The third point is judges appointing judges. Under the Collegium System, judges are appointing judges. How far it can be fair? The fourth point is it is creating empire within an empire. Judiciary is an empire, and it is creating empire within an empire because judges themselves are appointing the judges. Right? The next point is how can one question the Parliament's supremacy? Parliament should be supreme, and how the Constitution bench of Supreme Court will question the supremacy of the will of the people? The last one is NJAC is basically to enhance transparency as a whole, and it will strengthen democracy because the previous system of collegium is without transparency, and the Constitution originally was silent about the detailed procedure for appointment of judges. Right? There are strong arguments both in favor of the judgment, against the judgment. Now we have to wait further and see the further course of action by the government and the Supreme Court, and the intense debate is going on in the country whether the Parliament is supreme or basic structure of the Constitution can be changed or not. What exactly is the basic structure? In view of the no clear guidelines mentioned in the Constitution with regard to the appointment of judges, who will appoint judges, whether the judges appointing judges is the right procedure or not. So these things and intense debate is going on in this country, and let us hope some breakthrough in future. Right friends, with this let us conclude this news analysis and features. Have a nice day. Thank you.